The woman who accused the Duke Lacrosse players of raping her later on murdered her boyfriend and is now behind bars, scheduled, I believe, to be released next year. This was a huge scandal, the Duke Lacrosse thing. Began discussions about the privilege that the lacrosse players allegedly enjoyed. I think all but one were white. Mr. McConnell, check that. Zaxter, check that and see. I think there was one black player. I'm not quite sure. Most of them are white. And it's a sport that's often played by wealthy people. And their parents, many of the parents were very wealthy, so obviously they got special privilege, and they were arrogant and thought they could just hire a stripper and then rape her and get away with it. That's kind of the through line. You remember our friend Stephen Miller, who's now one of the top advisors to Donald Trump? We first met him when he was a student at Santa Monica High. I think he was 15 years old, something like that. And I can't remember whether he wrote me a letter or I read something about him. Anyway, he came on the show. He'd never been on radio before or TV. And the issue was the law in California is that every morning schools are supposed to raise the flag and kids are supposed to cite the Pledge of Allegiance. You can't force them to cite it, but you are supposed to hold the ceremony and people that want to participate can participate. And no one was doing it. And so Steve went to school supervisors, principals, and complained that they were not following the law, and they still weren't doing it. So he came on my show and talked about how the school was violating the law by not allowing kids to recite the Pledge of Allegiance in the morning. And the upshot of it was he generated so much pressure that the school began doing it. And that's how we met him. And he was so sharp, so bright, so articulate, so knowledgeable, so passionate that I had him on the show time and time and time again. One time, he and I were talking about how often he was on the show. And he said, I was on the show 69 times because I counted them. And he graduates from Santa Monica High, and then he goes to Duke. And wouldn't you know it, he's at Duke when this scandal breaks. And Stephen did some investigation and immediately concluded that she was lying and reached that conclusion before much of the country did. He came on my show to talk about it. He came on the Nancy Grace show to talk about it. And that's when the rest of the country began to learn about who this man Stephen Miller is. And he knew that she was lying, said she was lying, went on my program, went on television and said she was lying, and it turned out she was lying. You know who didn't think she was lying? The DA. His name was Nifong. And he goes to a historically black college in that area and begins to attack the white kids on the lacrosse team, claiming that he had all this mountain of evidence that she was telling the truth, and by golly, I'm going to nail these guys to the cross. It turned out he had exculpatory evidence that apparently he had not turned over to the other side, and it turns out that she, the accuser, Crystal Magna, was completely, totally lying. And Nifong, the DA, not only was embarrassed and ashamed and had to apologize, he got disbarred. He lost his license to practice law. Why? Because the job of a DA is not to get convictions. The job of a DA is to do justice. And if you don't feel you have a case, or you feel you have evidence that hurts your case, it is your job to turn that over to the other side. It is your job to drop the case if you don't believe in the evidence and the law. And he did not. And that is why, by the way, we're getting off on a tangent, but that is why, by the way, that I believe that Alvin Bragg and Letitia James violated the canons of ethics that apply to a prosecutor by running for office, Fonnie Lewis as well, running for office, promising to get Donald Trump. It is not the job of a prosecutor to get somebody. It is the job of a prosecutor to gather evidence that suggests guilt, that suggests you could win, prevail in a trial. And if at some point the evidence does not support your presumption that this person committed a crime, you have to drop the case. A prosecutor, unlike a defense lawyer, his or her job is to do justice. A defense lawyer's job is to get the best possible deal for his or her client. Facts be damned. That's why you find defense lawyers making all sorts of ridiculous arguments and theories and floating this and floating that. It is their job to get their client the best possible outcome. It is not their job to uncover the truth. It's their job to get the best possible outcome for their client. By the way, Alan Dershowitz participated in the O.J. Simpson case. He was there to do the appeal in the event that O.J. Simpson would be convicted. He wrote a book called The Best Defense once. And in that book, he said almost all criminal defendants are in fact guilty. And that a criminal defense lawyer's job is to get the best possible deal, which often means hiding the truth. Now, he said that. I didn't. He said that. So the woman now says, well, I didn't do it, and I hope that I can be forgiven. Number 39, please.
They were my brothers, and they trusted me that I wouldn't betray their trust. And I testified falsely against them by saying that they raped me when they didn't. And that was wrong.
My crack research team has determined that Devon Sherwood was the sole black person on the Duke Lacrosse team. Which brings us to the role played by the Reverend Al Sharpton, who later claimed I had nothing to do with it, when in fact he had a great deal to do with it. In the dictionary, under the word chutzpah, there's a picture of smiling Al Sharpton wearing that same hat he was wearing in that undercover FBI tape when he was agreeing with an undercover FBI agent to buy cocaine or to take cocaine they would later on sell for a profit. Did you know about that? Oh, yeah. It's on YouTube. You can just type in Al Sharpton cocaine deal, and here he is, fast forward, Democrat kingmaker. Only in America. Thanks for watching these clips from The Larry Elder Show. If you enjoyed this content, be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a moment. More thought-provoking discussions are just a click away, so stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next one.